So the good news is that this cabinet has been saved. Well, kinda. And the bad news is my garage looks like a fucking mess. Well, the reason for the good news is that my sister has a similar respect for old video games like this here, and since this is a double dragon cab that can be easily changed to make it more authentic and stuff, well, it's kind of hard to kind of gut it out and paint it and stuff. So we thought about other alternatives to gutting this and painting it up and making it something else. And that's why my garage looks like a giant mess. It's because I made the suggestion that we build our own cabinet, and that's what we're doing right now. But that's for her video. Anyway, this thing is going to be mine now, I guess. I'm going to buy this off of her after we finish the cabinet, and already I've modified it a little bit. Let's open this up. We got this. It's just kind of floating around because there's no way to mount this, but what this is a Raspberry JAMMA board. And what this does is hooks your Raspberry Pi up to JAMMA. What I think it does is that it converts your HDMI to an RGB signal for the monitor, and then also the controls going through the GPIO. Audio also goes through HDMI and is converted. Luckily, there isn't too much lag here as far as the controls go, as far as I've tested. I don't know. Another thing I learned is to not pull this out with the power on, because when you pull this out with the power on, something shorted back there to ground. That was after the power supply, I think. Or maybe it wasn't before the power supply. Something shorted, blew the main fuse, and then tripped my GFCI. So something was not quite happy in here, so we won't power up when it's open, but let's take a look at this thing here. So that's what the Raspberry JAMMA looks like when it's all naked. It looks pretty simple. It's got an audio amplifier built in, so you won't need anything externally. It does a really good job. I was kind of surprised how loud it gets, even though it's just a couple components on this board. I think all the magic happens in there. That's just like some sort of a video converter, I think, that converts it to the RGB for the arcade monitor, and then it splits out the audio to the this headphone jack here. It just kind of goes from here to here, and then I think that goes to the amplifier there, and then I think this is all for the controls. I'm not entirely sure. It's just a bunch of diodes, but yeah, it looks pretty simple, but it gets the job done really well. And then here we have the Raspberry Pi that I chose to put on it. It's a Pi 3B Plus. And I've read in multiple places that the best Raspberry Pi for these sort of adapters, or at least for MAME or something like that, are typically Raspberry Pi 3s, even though the 4 exists and it's faster. Although I might get a 4 and try it out a little bit, play around with it. It's there's always tweaks to be had, and I think they're coming out with software for it. The 4 specifically. So this is just what I got for now. I think this thing cost me like 35 bucks, maybe 40 bucks, I forget. This thing costs like $150, but the reason I went with this, there are a couple ones that are cheaper, but this one seems to have the most software available, at least the biggest base, I guess. It's got a big old forum and people are talking about it and stuff, so it seems like it's something really easy just to throw in and go, and it has its own UI for the arcade game, so you're not stuck with the RetroArch or RetroPie or whatever the heck it is that the other ones use for the most part. But that's only as far as I know. I don't know everything about these, obviously. So this is just installed really easily. There's only really one way this can go on here, so that the ribbon cable here can go onto the GPIO of the Raspberry Pi. Just use the included screws to screw it on. There you go. And there, it's ready to go. You just put your games on the SD card, and then power it on. You're good to go. I also have a keyboard hooked up to it just to get to the service menu for the main menu system here. There is one improvement I wish they would do to this a little bit. Well, the image for the Raspberry Pi is easy to set up, as is most images for the Raspberry Pi. It gives you one partition that is readable by Windows, and it's a little bit small. It's only 2.5 gigabytes. I think they said they had it set up to be for an 8 gigabyte card, but that leaves you only about 110 megabytes to put ROMs on it, which is a little bit small. I think they should up the standard card size to 16 gigs, so it gives you like 8 gigs of space just to dump shit on there, because 100 megabytes left over is not that much space. You can extend that partition to the other side. Just extend the partition depending on the size of your SD card, but that requires a computer that can read this Linux shit, and that's a lot of effort, and I don't want to. So I guess I'm stuck with 110 megabytes until I get annoyed with it and I can't stand it anymore. But so far that hasn't been a problem. So yeah, after you get the image on your SD card, slap some ROMs on there, slap your Raspberry Pi on the board, all you gotta do is slap your connector on there with one hand, like this. It's very important you do it with one hand. If you do it with two hands, you might break it. There we go. The proper way to mount your Raspberry Pi JAMMA. Get in there, flip the little switch, and we have some video games. So I know everybody wanted to see my ugly mug through the reflection on this monitor, but there's still one thing that's missing here. One thing I did learn about playing MAME games is that if you're going to play old arcade games, you require beer. And we must have that. And we must use the only true bottle opener. Ah. There we go. Cool. Don't worry, YouTube. That's non-alcoholic. I'm not promoting the use of alcohol on my YouTube channel. Shh. So now I have my camera adjusted a little bit more correctly to the monitor so you can see the game better. Here we have this keyboard that I have hooked up to the Raspberry Pi. If we hit the tab button, it'll bring the usual MAME menu up, but it brings the game to a crawl, as you can kind of see. You can't really read this, but if you hit the tilde button to bring up the slider controls, you can see that I have the speech volume turned way the fuck down, and I have the game volume turned way the fuck up, but it's still a little bit quiet compared to the rest of the games. But yeah, it's Berserk. The video seems to be very pixel accurate. It looks very clear and crisp and nice on the CRT monitor. If we hit and hold the player 1 and player 2 buttons, we can exit this and go to the menu again. Let's play something that's a little bit more loud. Let's play Wizard of War. This is another cool game that I kind of rediscovered today. I knew about it like almost 10 years ago, but I'm like, what's good horizontal arcade games? Look through a bunch of lists. Wizard of War, holy shit, I haven't seen that for a long time. This is one of those, I think this is a Bally Midway game, but these games, yeah, Midway. These games right here love to abuse your ears. They're like me in that they try to find excuses to make retarded noises all the time. Very cool game though. But anyway, as you can see, this game runs really smoothly. You know, I've never played the actual arcade machine for this, so I can't like compare it to that obviously, but I would expect the arcade machine to play like this. So that's Wizard of War. What else we got? We got stuff like Robotron and Smash TV. Smash TV is another favorite of mine. I used to play it on the Midway Arcade Classics on the Xbox a lot. A little bit too much. But of course with an arcade machine with only two joysticks, well, you can only have one player. But that's fine. At least you can play it. As you can see, my monitor has a little bit of a squishing going on down at the bottom. I wonder if that's something that can be fixed with capacitors or something, but it only shows up on certain video modes or certain games, so I'm not entirely sure if that's a monitor thing or a Raspberry Pi thing. Bingo! Yeah. It's Smash TV. It's Robotron with more personality. And power-ups. Here's another old video game that really tries to abuse you with audio and horrific visuals. Mainly the explosion effect is pretty fucking cool. Space Zap. I had this in one of my older videos about my Pentium 4, I think. So this game has a bit of a weird setup. Depending on which computer and which version of MAME that I played it on, it has different visuals. The game renders in color, but the original monitor was only black and white with a color overlay. So on one of my computers it was rendered in black and white, one of my other computers it was rendered in the game's color mode, and this one is rendering with the black and white plus colored overlay, which is a bit weird. I wish it would just go to the color, because the color is pretty cool. Give it a credit here. So the point of this game is just to shoot all the spaceships and survive. It's like Cosmic Arc for the Atari 2600, except more obnoxious, if that's possible. Well, that's Space Zap. So one thing you can do in this menu is you can open the service menu for, or whatever the heck it is. It's Arpicade or whatever the heck. I'm not entirely sure what it's called. But if you hit the tab button on your keyboard, it brings up options if you ever wanted to like customize it like a screensaver and all that good stuff. Things with the emulators specifically and all that. And let's see here, what other cool arcade games? I got Salamander, R-Type. I haven't tried R-Type 2 yet. Robotron's a good classic. It looks really good on this. There are a couple of games that I've tried on this that get refreshed, and the refresh doesn't really match up, and it leads to a bit of a stutter. I'll show you one of those at least. So yeah, Robotron. Another game that likes to abuse you with sound effects. I'm not very good at it. I tried to get Raystorm to work, but I had my doubts because, you know, it's on a Raspberry Pi. This one does not launch. This does have a PS1 emulator, I do think, and I'm not sure. I think that's the version they would recommend you play as the PS1 version rather than the arcade version of Raystorm, but maybe I'll try and get that working sometime, see how good that runs. Probably not very good, but heck, who knows. Ghosts and Goblins is one that definitely doesn't run right on the version of the MAME that I put it on. This is what it will act like. We'll hear that clicking noise. It kind of makes that clicking noise every time it has to like skip frames or something, I think. So that's something I'll have to play with a little bit. See if we can get it to run a little bit better. Also, I'm really not fucking good at this game. Anyway, that's about it for this thing. Except it can run console games. I do have a couple Nintendo games on here. Just pop in some of those. I put a bunch of arcade-like games. Like Clue Clue Land is kind of arcadey, so that's a good one to put on an arcade machine. sounds a little bit louder on these. Oh. So yeah, it's a Nintendo emulator. That's what you would expect. Except not the best Nintendo emulator. Some of these sound effects are a little bit different. Where can I guess one good example I think would be Mario Bros. You can sort of hear the difference, just a hair. Oh shit. The coin sound, you hear that? It's not quite right, but it's close enough. But yeah. So that's Arpicade running in this Double Dragon cabinet. Maybe I'll make a video when I redo the control panel here to make it more like the original Double Dragon. And that'll be about it for this thing, I think.